Hi, it's Peter Schweizer, and welcome to the Drill Down. Nothing I like better than an ice-cold Diet Coke. But you know what? It's starting to leave a bad aftertaste in my mouth. It tastes, I dare say, a little bit like crony capitalism. Joined, of course, by Eric Eggers, and we're going to talk today about diet soda, big snack foods, and MAHA. Eric, how are you?
We're also talking advertising, so I think it's very important for you to disclose, as you just opened up a Diet Coke as part of this broadcast, were you just paid by Big Soda to influence people? Because, you know, conservative influencers are getting paid these days for these types of things.
Yeah, if I could get a Diet Coke sponsorship and a Crocs sponsorship, I would be in my element. But no, not compensated for it. Here to drink it, here to talk about the role that Coca-Cola and other corporations are playing in resisting the MAHA agenda and how they want to do it because they want access to our taxpayer money.
Yeah, there was two things. I mean, there's the taxpayer money piece of it, and then there's just the money piece of it. And there's two initiatives that have been floated recently by RFK Jr. As part of this MAHA movement. And these are initiatives aside from the fact that we just saw 10,000 people eliminated from HHS. And by the way, it was noteworthy that one of the commentators like, hey, it's interesting that pharmaceutical stocks are declining when people associated with the FDA are leaving, almost as if there's some relationship between people who work at the FDA being good for business for Big Pharma. But the two proposals are, number one, there's a chance they might try to get rid of pharmaceutical ads on TV.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, no chance.
Yeah.
because why? Because there's way too much money at stake.
Yeah, the media companies. You think of how many media companies would go out of business if you don't see those ads.
And it's the media companies, by the way, are like, nah, that's never going to happen. No, really. And then the other proposal is, hey, is there a chance that, and this is not actually under RFK's purview because he's not with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, but is there a chance that you might see soda stopped being listed as an eligible purchase for people receiving food stamps?
Right.
And that one seems to be more realistic, but what we want to talk about today is that's also really big money.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. You know, if you look at the question of ads, the advertising, I'm generally a free speech guy, but here's really the question. What is the ultimate purpose of those ads? Because if you are pitching them to people, you know, these are not just narrowcast to the medical community. They're pitched to the general public. Mm-hmm. What they're hoping the public's going to do is go to the doctor and I saw an ad with people that were dancing and happy, and I might have what potentially this drug will deal with. I want to be dancing and happy. Will you put me on that drug? I mean, am I wrong? Isn't that really what they're trying to do? They're trying to create a demand for their product, not in the medical profession with the experts, but with the general public.
Well,
right?
And if RFK Jr.'s general premise is that we're way overprescribed.
Right.
And part of that is because we have this inflated demand or desire for these pharmaceuticals,
right,
partly because we see these commercials on TV. I know it's like something out of the cast of Wicked, except for they're all mentally deranged or obese. It's like talking about defying gravity, am I right? But the point would be, like, it is unusual, just as a fact, for countries to allow you to advertise. Do you know we're one of only two countries that allow? No, I know, one of only two countries to allow pharmaceutical ads on TV, and I will give you $100 if you can guess the other one.
Germany, France,
yeah,
England?
not even. I like how you're like the Germans. They're messed up. They must be on something.
The Canadians,
dude. It's New Zealand.
New Zealand.
So it's weird, right?
That
so
is
the
weird.
United States and New Zealand. Maybe it's like a Lord of the Rings thing. But the point is, those are the two countries that
Right.
allow you to advertise. And everyone's like, no, it's insane because these pharmaceutical companies spend billions of dollars. They spent $7.9 billion from January to October of 2024. So it's big money. And there is actually precedent for removing something like this from the airwaves before.
Well, can we back up a little bit? And I don't know if you know the history. I'm genuinely curious. It wasn't always the case. I mean, they weren't advertising Valium in the 1960s or 1970s on television. So it did change. Was that kind of a lobbying thing? I mean, in other words, the big pharmaceutical companies just lobbied and Congress finally said, okay.
So there was a law that passed in 1997 that they used to have to declare every major side effect, like, you know, scratching, wheezing, you know, bleeding, you know, all the things, all the ings.
Right.
And then I think in 1997 they said you only have to declare like the most serious side effect. And so that's linked to, and I believe there was also some prohibitions that were removed when George W. Bush's drug bill passed, and I think 06. So like those are the two big things. But the thing that has happened before, where we have actually seen a removal of something that was permitted to be advertised, cigarettes. So cigarettes in 1965, they passed an ad that said we can't do television ads for those anymore. And then there was an amendment in 1969 that like made off of the broadcast. So what did cigarettes companies do? And this is like all the advertising industry people are like, look, if this happens, like pharmaceutical money, that's big money. If it's not going to go to TV, it's going to have to go somewhere else. And my favorite part of the story is cigarette companies went other places. Where they go? They went to NASCAR, so it became like the Winston Cup.
Right.
And they started advertising the Women's Tennis Association. So the Virginia Slims World Championship. I just like, we're playing tennis and also smoking.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I'm imagining the big pharma companies might go to mixed martial arts or UFC or something like that.
I don't know.
Pain relief. Here's the thing that's interesting to me about that, though, is and why it would be different to cigarettes. I understand why they banned the cigarette ads. When you buy a cigarette, you're paying for it yourself.
Yeah.
Generally, when you are on a prescription drug, it's a third party that's paying for it. That could be government. That could be an insurance company. The point is, I think that the companies realize if they push these products and you're not actually having to pay other than $5 or 10 or $20 for it, people are going to demand more of it. So they're kind of exploiting that third-party payer system to create a demand for something that people aren't going to pay. And that, to me, is just kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, well, and for the record, the people who are truly addicted to pharmaceutical company advertising is not maybe the consumer, but it's definitely the media companies. You noted prescription drug brands accounted for 30% of ad minutes across evening news programs on the major news networks through December of last year. So so when people are like, well, that's probably not going to get rid of those things. But then if the Trump administration, who has proven to be no great friend to the mainstream news, in fact, he's actively suing some of them for lots of money. I mean, maybe he isn't necessarily going to be beholden to the same corporate interests. But, you know, unlike the soda, where there's tax dollars going there, this is more just is this actually in the best interest of the American people's health? Right. And, you know, it does become kind of a freedom, and there's been lots of court rulings where, generally speaking, the courts have ruled on the side of freedom of speech, and so the drug companies have the right to do that. But it doesn't mean it hasn't been threatened. And I just think it's worth noting, if we all sort of recognize that they're probably not going to get rid of them just because of the money, then you know, that just speaks to like where the true incentives are in some of these debates. Yeah, and now one way to split the difference, right? If you can't ban, the Supreme Court could come down and say this is a First Amendment right. It's a legal product. You can't ban advertising for it. But what you could have RFK Jr. or the FDA or whoever has the authority here could come out and simply say, okay, you've got to list all the possible side effects, which might deter a lot more people from actually embracing these drugs, because some of them are pretty frightening. The point is there are things you could do to the ads if you can't ban them to make these products a little less attractive or a little less suggestive to people that they're going to fix their problems. The bottom line for me is it's creating a demand for a product that people aren't fully aware of the consequences of it. They ought to rely on their doctor. They should not be relying on themselves to do a self-diagnosis and then hit up the doc to say, I saw this ad, I want a prescription. But if you're a doctor, like you're someone who's been to medical school, not somebody who's just watching cable news 30 minutes ago, it's like, oh, I need that. I mean, presumably there's got to be some medical safeguards in place. By the way, my favorite thing from all the research we did just to do this segment, the Political article about RFK Jr.'s proposal and the likelihood of things being banned, in addition to what RFK Jr. said could happen, it says, quote, he also suggested with no evidence that pharmaceutical advertising influences journalists' work. Because there's no chance that's happening, right? Yeah, not at all. Not at all. We never have to worry about corporations doing that. Well, let's switch topics. First, I'm going to take another sip of the Diet Coke. Yeah, that aftertaste is still there. Crony capitalism. So this is the issue of, we have S.N.A.P, which is a nutrition program to help people that are having nutritional needs, particularly for children. It's literally what the N stands for. It's Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Exactly right. So food stamps, it's for nutrition, and yet a sizable percentage of that money, and we're talking billions of dollars, ends up going for things that are not very nutritional. Things like pork rinds, sodas, not diet sodas. I'm talking full throttled
sodas with corn syrup in them.
Well, let's not pretend a Diet Coke's a protein shake now. I mean,
I think it's healthy. I think it's very, very healthy for you. Look at Trump. I mean, Trump drinks Diet Coke and eats Big Macs. So,
Do you hear yourself, Martha?
But here's the thing about this program, and they're getting a lot of pushback from corporations, from Coca-Cola and other companies. It's not designed to do anything other than provide basic nutrition for people. There's no nutritional matter in these products whatsoever. But beyond that, this is something that's being done as a benefit to people. They're not spending their own money. They're spending our taxpayer money. And this is a huge subsidy for these companies like Pepsi and Coca-Cola that not only make soda, they produce a lot of snack products, et cetera. They make a lot of money through these government programs.
Yeah, and I think it does speak to how different the conversations we're having as a country are under the Trump administration.
Yeah.
And it's no longer just, hey, we're going to cut these USAID programs. What are we paying for in Trafalgar and things of that nature?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, what are we spending our tax dollars on? And this SNAP program is one of the major benefit programs. It costs $100 billion a year in tax dollars, helps 42 million Americans afford groceries.
Yeah.
And so there clearly are some benefits, but it's not just the people that benefit. These corporations benefit as well. And so if the goal is truly to make Americans healthy, then some of the things, and this is just true, that you can buy under this program aren't making us healthier. And so if they're costing us money and they're making us less healthy, then I do think it's actually kind of cool that we're even willing to have the conversation. Maybe we should stop doing that. Listen to this. Soft drink consumption increased globally. This is, there's stats on this. There's all kinds of stats on this. But from 97 to 2010, we went from drinking as a people 9.5 gallons per person per year to 11.5 gallons over a 13-year span. Now, consider this, that a 1% increase in soft drink consumption basically causes an extra 5% of adults to become overweight.
Do we have a weight problem in America?
We didn't during COVID. We sort of literally thinned the herd. But no, I think it's like we do have a weight problem. We have a significant obesity problem. And the soda consumption is such that people are now recognizing, like, yeah, this is no good. So we're actually seeing some movement on this. Now, the difference, and it gets a little wonky and technical, and we'll see if the pushback from the sodas, which is coming, is going to be as effective as Big Pharma is going to be able to kind of keep it. Because if they're going to ban pharma advertising, it'll happen at the national level.
Yeah. But here's the thing. If they don't ban this, they should open up the SNAP program and say, you can buy a pack of cigarettes. It's basically the same thing, right? You're letting people make a choice and you're subsidizing it. So let's open up all the gates.
Or at the very least, some Zins. Do you actually know what that is?
I do not know.
I didn't think you...
I'm just laughing along.
No,
That's
I know.
very funny. What are you talking about?
I barely know what it is, but I think it's like what the kids do these days. It's like a tobacco pouch you put in your mouth. So it's like what people do to get the nicotine instead of a cigarette thing.
Yeah, so, so here's the thing. We know that RFK Jr. is looking at pushing this idea. It's really, the SNAP program is actually under the Department of Agriculture, which is kind of an interesting conflict in a way, right? Because their focus is on the agriculture industry pushing their interests. They're the ones running this nutrition program, but that's fine. RFK Jr. is pushing it, but there's also some interesting action at the state level.
Yeah.
You had West Virginia, the governor of West Virginia, who is, let's just say, a rather hefty guy.
Is he?
Yeah, has called for there to be an exemption. So the SNAP program in West Virginia is not allowed to have sodas and other things covered in the program. He sees it as a problem in his state, and West Virginia has significant pockets of poverty. So they're asking for this ban to take effect in West Virginia. Hopefully it'll be approved, and I know there are other states looking at it as well.
Yeah, can we just say that one of my favorite things about this story is that I do think this is one of the few areas in 2025 you're still allowed to stereotype, right? Like it's
stereotype is fact.
I'm not saying you are. I'm saying I want to.
Okay, because that's definitely true.
Oh, definitely true. So you're like, well, he's a big old boy. I believe you. I believe that the West Virginia governor might be, but good for him because he's saying they're going to request this waiver. But my favorite thing is the quotes on this. RFK says, I urge every governor to follow West Virginia's lead and submit a waiver to help the USDA remove soda from SNAP. If there's one thing that we can agree on, it should be eliminating taxpayer-funded soda subsidies for lower-income kids, because that's where this disproportionately affects, right? And that's
exactly right.
Unfortunately, there's a very strong link between lower-income population populations and obesity, and that leads
Yeah.
to lower health outcomes.
Yeah.
So it really is sort of like this targets the most vulnerable with this stuff. And then I love that the soda lobby, the American Beverage Association, they say, but the fact remains, sir, SNAP restrictions won't make anyone healthier or save taxpayer dollars. The current debate has made clear that the more people are waking up to the reality of these proposals, short-sighted sound bites that hurt American families and veterans and turn grocery stores into the government's food police.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. They're trying to make this an issue of freedom of choice. Well, here's the thing. If you are getting money in a government program, there's certain things you cannot use that money for. And one of them should be things that have no nutritional value whatsoever. I mean, that's the bottom line. Here's the other thing I would add is that, look, there's some people who maybe instinctively want to take up the cause of these companies. Oh, this is capitalism. It's Milton Friedman, great Nobel Prize winning economist who I met several times when I was at the Hoover Institution, great guy. He made a vitally important point that is so applicable here. And that is there's a big difference between being pro-free market and pro-corporation and pro-business. In other words, this is not something where the marketplace decides. If you are somebody as an individual who wants to drink a 12-pack of Coca-Cola every day, you are entitled to do this. This is America. Spend the money, your money, however you want. If it's government money, it's not the same thing. So we're not pro-business, we're pro-free market. And this has absolutely nothing to do with the free market.
Well, ironically, you're more likely to choose to drink a 12-pack of soda each day if you're on SNAP.
Yeah.
Because that's what the stats say. SNAP recipients reported drinking about 9 sugary beverages per week, which is well more than anybody else that's not on SNAP. I mean, that's, again, this is the population. And you've seen a lot of pushback from companies like the soda companies. So we talked about Coca-Cola. They get 40% of their revenue from North America, and it's estimated that, and this is in like the earnings reports and stuff, right? So they say if the volumes come under pressure because SNAP bans sugary drinks, Coca-Cola's global sales would go down by 2.5%.
Wow.
I mean,
wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. 2.5%. I mean, you're talking billions of dollars.
And that's the world. Like, so if the United States cuts, they say soda's no good. You can't use food stamps to buy soda in the United States. Their global sales dropped 2.5%. You and I were trying to run some math on this because there's a lot of different estimates about what percentage of Coca-Cola's sales actually come from SNAP. And what did we come up with?
About 11 to 13% of their sales. That's the most authoritative. There's some estimates
but then
out
how
there.
much in real dollars then?
Yeah. I mean, that's tens of billions of dollars. And it not only applies to Coca-Cola, by the way, it applies to companies like Walmart. About 25% of all the SNAP grocery spending in America comes from Walmart. So Walmart is a big loser. And again, remember Coca-Cola, Pepsi owns Frito-Lay. The point is, if you not only ban sodas, but I think you ban snack foods, right? Okay, loading up on the pork rinds with SNAP money's not healthy for you either, just like soda's not healthy for you. That should be banned. You're talking about even larger numbers. So they're going to fight this. They're going to resist this. But I think this is an opportunity for the Trump administration to do something great in the area of nutrition that's really going to help people. And there's going to be people, squealing about it and mad about it, but you should do it because it's the right thing to do.
When you said squealing, is that the word you really meant to say?
It is, but not for the reasons you're inferring.
Listen, I'm just saying, let's put some respect. Let's quit body shaming the people out there.
I'm not body shaming anybody.
Well, I'm going to, because if you wanted to guess the states that drink the most soda, what state do you think drinks the most soda?
Mississippi.
You're correct. See, it's so fun. Come on in.
How much do they drink?
Come on in. The weather's warm.
Do we know how much they drink?
Well, too much.
Well, too much. Yeah.
No,
I mean, so look, this is an opportunity to really help people become more healthy. It's going to benefit the rest of us because, a lot of the issues we have like diabetes and obesity, it's not going to necessarily solve those problems, but it's certainly going to help. So this is not a victimless crime. This actually, costs people their health. It costs the rest of us money, and I think it's something they need to push for aggressively.
Well, I think here's the point, right? And why we're sort of tackling and combining both the pharma ad issue and the soda subsidy issue is because what we try to do here at the Government Accountability Institute is we try to say, okay, what are some things that generally speaking people might acknowledge and say, it's probably not best case scenario. Like, this is a thing that could probably change if you wanted to change. And then we say, well, how come it doesn't change? And the reality is because the status quo is entirely too profitable for entities that are entirely too powerful, right? Or they just happen to be, and they have a louder voice in these issues of public discourse. And that's exactly it. So we're like, okay, RFK Jr. says we might get rid of soda. We're not going to subsidize it with, the food stamp program anymore. I'm like, will we? If they do, I'm just saying that's a massive, massive thing. And I am more optimistic because if you do have a state like West Virginia that's pushing for this and it becomes what other states can do, here's what's really fun about this is it's mostly red states that are into this. And so you might think that you would have some support from kind of the anti-corporate crusaders like Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders in the Senate. But they're not on this.
Interesting.
These are generally speaking red states that are like, it's not good for you. And so it is going to be interesting to see, what constituencies want to weigh in on the anti-big business, pro-public health that would seem to be traditionally Democrats, but that's not what's happening.
Well, and to your point, it's a further illustration that the Republican Party is no longer the party of the Chamber of Commerce. Right, which is where they were 15, 20 years ago. I mean, it was big corporations, Republican Party, sent a lot of contributions, a lot of checks. In the era of Trump, that is not the case. So they're not going to have a sympathetic ear, and they're not going to be able to pull the same levers that they might have been able to pull in the past. So let's keep in mind, this is an important story. We're going to keep watching it. And let's also continue to keep in mind there's a difference between capitalism, which we love, and crony capitalism, which is getting rich off of government contracts, government inside deals. That's what I would classify this as. We don't like crony capitalism. It does leave a bad aftertaste in our mouth.
And we did a podcast on this with the episode you were at with Andy McClanahan, who has investigated the fraudulent aspect of this program. And we talked about how much money there. And by the way, you've now seen Elon Musk come out and say, we found lots of potential fraud in the Social Security Administration. And it just shows you like there's a lot of things that when you really do peel back the layers and look at these types of programs, which you have to do, you have to look at these entitlements because of the percentage of the budget that they represent. I do think that we're potentially going to see, a fundamentally different conversation. The fraud piece of it, just to kind of bring it back here, the soda companies and Walmart, they don't care if the transaction is legitimate or fraudulent because they get paid no matter what.
Yes.
And so, if they started trying to look at the fraud, these are just other examples of not only do they not care about necessarily the public health because they're just trying to sell a product, they also don't care about the health of the program from a fiscal transparency and efficiency standpoint because they get paid no matter what. We did a report on it where the credit card companies who administer the cards for the states, they get paid per transaction regardless on if it's a legitimate transaction or not. They also get paid to issue new cards. So it's almost like they're incentivized for more cards to be stolen or lost and replaced because they get paid for that. So it does speak to an incentive issue, and that's, I think, the part of the conversation that needs to change. And I'm actually optimistic that it is.
Yeah, it's very exciting that we're having this conversation. I'm going to keep drinking my Diet Coke. What are you drinking over there, by the way? That's not a Diet Coke.
It's not a Diet Coke. It's a carbonated water. It's Topo Chico because I'm just trying to send soft signals about my stance on the immigration policy. So
are you? Okay. Well, we'll have to have that discussion next time. We'll bring out the Topo Chicos, which is a great drink, by the way. And we appreciate you, as always, taking the time to listen to this podcast. We know your time is valuable. You can find out more about the research and the work we do at thedrilldown.com, and you can subscribe to this podcast, also named The Drill Down, wherever fine podcasts are located. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.